What is Pat saying now? What crazy fundamentalist psychotic bullshit is he saying now? Oh my god. So this is the funny thing. I mean, not funny, haha, but so someone writes in this question, right? And everybody kind of overlooks, like, actually what this person asked. So it starts off, my daughter just told me she was sexually abused by a neighbor boy at the age of 6. Let's go back. My daughter just told me. Just told me. So this mother was just told by her daughter that a neighbor boy, when she was 6, abused her, and she is now 35. How do I forgive and deal with this? The guilt and helplessness is overwhelming. So this is a mom who feels guilty, maybe complaint, or something happened. She couldn't protect her daughter from something that happened, and this just popped up on her. So she's dealing with that. Somehow, old Pat here, whose batteries are dying out, you could totally tell, answered this a little differently.
700 Club, it's time for your questions and some honest answers from Pat. We'll start with this one from a viewer. My daughter just told me she was sexually abused by a neighbor boy at the age of 6. She's now 35. How do I forgive and deal with this? The guilt and helplessness is overwhelming.
May I say, I think you're making too big a deal of it. Little kids don't know what they're doing. They don't have any sexual identity, and they like to play doctor, and they do all this stuff. Your daughter's 6, your friend is probably 6 or 7, and so that was 35.
30 years ago.
30 years ago. So, I mean, get over it. I mean, I can't imagine that has had some kind of a scar in her life. She's a little kid, and they do these things. And I think what you do is forgive and forget. How do you get over it? I mean, why would you, harbor this thing? I mean, little children do what little children do, and they're just exploring. They don't know any better. And I'm sorry. If it's a neighbor's child or whatever, you can't bring, the statute of limitations is run. I think it's something else. If a priest or somebody like that in authority has molested your kid, that's a whole nother matter. But a couple little kids trying to experiment, that's just what, I mean, little children are little children. And you've just got to say, okay, I forgive them, and there, but by the grace of God, go I, and then get on with life.
And speaking of assumptions, actually, I shouldn't have said mom, because we actually don't know. It says viewer. Could be a dad. It's probably a mom, but it still could be a dad. And Pat has gone on this whole thing like he's talking about the victim. Now, I noticed in a later portion of the clip that I'm not showing on here, but he couldn't read the information on whatever, like I wouldn't say cue card, on a monitor. He was reading it wrong, and the dude is blind as a bat. So I'm sure he just absolutely didn't understand the question, but he ended up kind of like saying, yeah, it's totally normal for kids to be touching each other and doing all that stuff. Get over it. Oh, but if it was an older guy touching a little boy, no, that's very serious. That's serious. This is where that mentality comes from. And I even talked about it on the Catholic Church thing with that, where people get more enraged when an adult male touches a young boy. It's just because of this bullshit. Because if you rephrase that comment into some boy touched my other son, whatever, my son, blah blah blah, he would answer that completely differently. He would be going off on the gays and how they're heathens and going to hell and all this stuff, and your poor son, and he's not gay. Like, he would have gone on this whole other thing. But they said daughter, and this is when his whole sexist bullshit comes out. It just does. And then he mentioned that church thing. But when it's with the church thing, a lot of times, well, at least the stuff that they report on a lot of that stuff is male on younger boys. Though in that report, I believe it was both, but the majority of that, where that outrage comes from, actually comes from the same mentality that you just heard from him, which again, he completely answered this in a whole different way. That's not wasn't the question, but also it kind of makes you think, how many kids did you touch, Pat? Because I know damn well I did not play doctor with my friends and then touch them in places, and then he's making an assumption that this boy is the same age as this girl, and it says sexually assaulted, so they it doesn't matter the age. And in fact, bringing this up, which was interesting, I was like, yes, we know that we need to tackle this issue very early on, even before any he's like, oh, they don't know anything, that's not even sexual. It's like, no, these things actually start very young in their development years. So no, that is not something to brush off. That's another boys will be boys thing, or even girls. I mean, but more times than not, these stories of that kind of bullshit, it could be just because it's less reported, but I can tell you right now, I did not play doctor with my young friends and touch them in places that I shouldn't have, at any point in my younger years. I mean, I had to think about this going, was there any time that I touched my best friend when I was a kid? No. No. No, we were told boundaries. There was some weird thing with another boy, that no, I wouldn't classify it as molested. He just did something weird that would have fit into a category of like, eh. But actually, today I question what made them do that, and it makes me question their home life. Like maybe an adult did something weird to them to make them do that. I don't want to get into the whole thing, but it was bizarre. It's not even a story that I heard from anybody ever. But regardless, I should have said something as a kid, but it was so weird. And then he did do the little secret thing. He's like, don't say I'll get in trouble. And I was kind of like, okay. And he's like, I do this to my sister. And then like as years gone on and as we've been talking about all this stuff, I'm sitting there thinking, oh my god, like, what if this guy was doing bad shit to his sister, and what if she's coming out today, or something bad happened to her years ago because he was doing something that I think that it would have been caused from another adult. Like, it was a weird thing, and I have no idea. I have no idea to this day. But no, none of it is to be brushed off ever. His mentality is so fucking ancient. So even though it says boy, again, it could have been a teenager. It could have been. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't even fucking matter the age. That's like saying, like, I can do anything to your body, just deal with it. You can't control how somebody's gonna react to it. Somebody may not be as traumatized by it than as another. So this is just stupid shit, dude. And I don't know how he's on the air still saying bullshit like that. I mean, if I was the mom or the dad, whoever wrote that in, and then he responded like that, I mean, it actually got worse after that because they were talking about this abortion thing, which I won't get into on here, but it was the way he responded, and it's like, oh, gee, yeah, that should make you feel really better with your guilt. Oh my god. But as we get into this whole thing, I wanted to bring this up first into getting into the whole Catholic Church thing, because I know that that's been a big topic. But it's funny that people are not getting the bigger picture of this. Like, I don't know why they're so stuck on, oh, this institution where they cover up it. It's like, yeah, but so does all of America. Like, we're kind of like one big, large institution that covers up all these crimes. So you're kind of like microscoping inside the problem. Like, why do you think that is occurring? Like, that was another thing, because I was like, I don't think people get why that is occurring anyway. I'm sure there's some psychology to the fact as to why somebody with those issues that doesn't get help, that they go and seek refuge in a church where they think that they're going to be forgiven for their thoughts and trying to live a better life, and then yet it opens a door for them to be in front of the very thing that they shouldn't be around, and then they go touching kids, and then once they do that, then they do this whole thing like Pat's doing, well, God will forgive you, and just move on with it. So they continue this back and forth, and they protect each other, and it's the same mentality as anybody in America, where they think, you should just get on with it, just forgive and forget. um no, you actually need to do something about something. If there's no consequences to something, then nothing changes. So I do have problems with some of that mentality, and a lot of that has created a lot of this. Another thing that's created a lot of this is the fact that we're not um tackling the issue with people who are born liking children. It's not acceptable to even talk about that. So, um, again, there's some sort of reason why they're attracted to going to that church, to the Catholic Church, and in other churches. It doesn't matter, like anywhere like that, where it just thrives, because they're not in a society where they can come out to seek help, which you want to, if we want to stop that problem. So I've been thinking about this for a long time, and it's kind of like, okay, the way we're doing stuff is not working, and it's making everything worse. And the last thing you want things to do is to hide under rocks and pop out at really bad times. Even things like racism and all that stuff, like, you don't want that shit hidden, and it has been kind of hidden away in like media and stuff like that, to where people, I mean, I don't want to get into all that right now because we were talking about that today, but in that same sense, where you don't want something bad hidden to where you cannot tackle it. You don't want to mute things, because then you don't know what's there, and then you can't tackle it, and you want to be able to tackle it. So you need to have a society where people feel comfortable enough to talk about their problems, so then we can tackle it, so then you can at least cut down on a huge chunk of what is going on, so we don't have this cycle of things happening over and over again, because they're scared to say anything, and then they go out and hide out there, and then they go do something, and then everybody forgives them, and then they help hide them. And there's a lot to this. It's a pretty hefty topic, and it's one that the religious right starts freaking out on and going, oh, they're trying to recognize it as a thing. I'm like, well, it is a thing. What do you want to say about it? Do you think it's a conscious decision? They're like, I want to like children because I want to get murdered in the USA. I mean, because that's really kind of where it heads when they get caught. So, I mean, you do have to kind of rethink how you are viewing this. Even for myself, like for my predators, like mostly when I was underage, that outside of me getting angry when I talk about them sometimes, the main issue that I had with people is that they didn't listen, and they didn't help him to get help, right? So there was no consequences in that, nor was there anybody there to get him in trouble, to get him the help he needed, for whatever this weird shit that he pulled. And ultimately, that was what I wanted in this. I wasn't out trying to, like, oh, I want him thrown away and then gas chambered. Like, that wasn't what was going on. But people covered for it. So it's no different. I don't understand why people act so shocked. Like, they act like they're not part of this problem, and they are part of that very problem. And it's almost like there was a video today of some guy in Paris, and he goes and he chased this woman around. He was harassing her, and then he goes and he punches her, he hits her, and there's a group of people, and they're just sitting there kind of like, oh, what happened? Oh, whatever kind of thing. And they go talk to the predator guy, And then they just let the guy walk off, kind of, and no one arrests the guy. Nothing happens. The girl's just like, what the hell? And she takes off finally. Nobody does anything. And then everybody's like, what? Why is everybody just sitting back and not doing anything? I would have kicked that guy's ass. I go, no, you would have acted exactly like the situation you saw. People think that they would act differently in situations until they're in that situation. And I can tell you right now, nobody does the right thing. It's very rare you see a single person go and do the right thing. I have, and it was always my frustration. I'm like, why couldn't somebody else not do it? Why do I have to be forced to be the one to go step up on the plate? Because every time I do, I get this massive backlash, and then people don't have my back over it. Nobody supports me. And then at the end of the day, I'm always right when I go after that type of stuff. But it's the same thing, because people don't want to involve themselves in other people's problems. They don't want to involve themselves in any sort of thing that they think doesn't affect them. When it does, it really does. At the end of the day, it still affects you. It affects your kids. It affects generations of things by not trying to step up and make changes on things that are could definitely destroy other people's lives. It may not destroy yours, but it has destroyed other people's lives. So when you're looking at this, people's people need to change how they think about this. And if what is the ultimate goal? The ultimate goal is to stop this type of thing from happening. So how do you stop this type of thing from happening? It's not, let's keep throwing them all in prison and keep them there for a million years. If the statistics are true that once they're caught, not when they're not caught, because I've heard arguments of where they say, oh, their average amount of victims is like hundreds. It's like, yeah, because they were not caught yet. But when they say that when they get caught, that a majority of them actually don't reoffend. So if that is true, then that would show that maybe we should focus there. That yes. So then what could you do to make it where you can have a society where it's more open, where they can actually come forward first and say, you know what, I have this problem, you know, mom, dad, whatever, and I have this going on. And then you can go seek them to get help at a very young age instead of hiding out because they know, oh my God, the world, no, you don't want that. I don't want that. I absolutely don't want that. I would have loved if half these guys got their fucking help like long beforehand. And it starts off when they're young, because there's been a lot of them that started out, and they'll tell you like when they're 15 in their teen years. But a lot of that stuff they're like born with it. I don't know what happens. We don't know all the answers to this. Maybe somebody has some, you know, theory as to how this occurs, but at some point in your younger years, in your development years, something goes on there, and then onward into your teen years. So I mean, from the beginning to that point, the most important years are those, I don't know, what is it, between like 3 and 6, somewhere around there, the really young years. And I think it's genetic. I don't know. It could be environmental. It could be a couple of those things together. But we need to relook at this. And on top of all that, the justice system is a joke. I was going off yesterday. I just had it. Like, I just had it. They're not getting it. And now I'm kind of in a place where going, okay, now I feel that frustration that other people felt, where you feel like you're banging your head on a wall, and it's like you're not getting it. You're not getting it. You're not getting it. It's like people have made complaints after complaints after complaints, and then you find that you have like a 1% chance of even winning any type of case of going after any of this. And when you're looking at that, you're just like, well, so then the whole system is rigged against everybody, to where corruption can just thrive and you cannot stop what is occurring. And such as in the Catholic Church case, where law enforcement just turns a blind eye. Like I said, sex crimes are on the lowest scale of their interest. They want to go after freaking gangs and drugs. That gets their juices flowing. The sexual stuff, they don't care, because some of them, a lot of them, have some of the same issues. So of course they don't want to go tackle that. It's like tackling themselves. So they haven't even scratched the surface on those issues, and it's really depressing, and it frustrates me when I hear people just gloating on how great they are, and I'm like, I'm glad you have that privilege, because a lot of people in this world don't have that privilege.